Coming to you from the Safe Space Studios, I'm Brodor, and this is a Why We Game product review. In this episode, CMON's Zombicide Chronicles, the role-playing game. Or is it Come On or Cool Mini or not? I'm not really sure what the preferred nomenclature is these days, so let's go with CMON. To be perfectly upfront, I'm not keen on a $40, 171-page full-color hardcover, even though it has really, really great paper quality. I don't know, maybe I'm old, maybe I'm miserly, maybe I just want more game for that amount of money. But what I can tell you is it does a wonderful job of replicating the themes, the vibe, the tone of the just, buzzword, whatever, right? It really does a great job of just feeling like Zombicide. And of course they have all the same art, which I find really delightful. I like the juxtaposition of this sort of cartoony violence and the nature of the horror itself, the need to survive and to fight the unending waves of the undead in order to do so. And I really enjoy the board games. I love how the tension and the momentum of the board game build, and I think the role-playing game has some solid mechanics to definitely create that sense at the table while giving you an opportunity to dig deeper into the personalities of the characters, of the NPSs or the non-player survivors, and the other intriguing elements of the world. Now, the action resolution mechanics are actually quite simple. Each character is going to have 3 attributes and 6 proficiencies. And there's going to be a little matrix or a grid, which are 3 in your 6, right? And each one of those things is going to be rated from 1 to 3. And there are going to be 18 corresponding actions. So let's say you wanted to do a melee action. You're going to look at your muscle rating and you're going to look at your combat proficiency, and that's going to tell you your particular dice pool. And your dice pools are going to range anywhere from 1 to 12 based on modifiers both positively and negatively. So things like the difficulty level of a task may subtract dice from your pool, while having favorable gear or equipment for a task may give you bonuses to said pool. Now, you can roll a maximum of 12 dice, but here's the catch. Any die above the 6th die, that means the 7th through the 12th die, you roll a different color. And the reason that you do that is that if your dice come up as 1s or zombie heads, those are failures that are locked in. Every 6 you roll is a success. You set those aside. If you roll a 1 or a zombie head on any of your mastery dice, the dice that are above 6 or above your 6th die, those dice you may one time re-roll your 1s or zombie heads. So you want to set those apart. So if your character is really kick-ass at a particular thing, you get the bonus of mastery in that particular action, which I found really kind of a fun thing, and it can make the game feel big and exciting and roll large piles of dice like you're doing in the board game. Now, in most situations, any die that is a 4 or greater, you can earn a point of stress and you can make that die a success, right? So it's really slick. You have this mechanic or this resource built in that you can build stress to yourself to drive more success in the game. And what's great is that as you're succeeding at things in the game, like killing zombies, just like in the board game, you're building this adrenaline, and the adrenaline that you build through each particular mission is going to unlock bigger and better skills and let you take on bigger and greater hordes of zombies and really give you that over-the-top vibe that the game provides in its board form. But also it's got a cool mechanic in terms of the stress, because once you've reached your stress maximum, you may no longer manipulate your dice. However, if you want a game that is going to feel a bit even more heroic or less heroic, you can increase or reduce the amount of stress cap that each of the players has. So if you want to have a much more gritty, dark world, then you have a lower stress cap. And if you want to have, or a lower stress multiplier, if you want to have a bigger, bolder D&D, high fantasy, Black Plague, Green Horde experience that I want to have, you can definitely do that by increasing their stress multiplier. In combat, however, if you want to burn stress, instead of it being a flat 4 or higher that you have access to, you can do it based on the weapon's rating. So each weapon is going to have an accuracy rating. So sometimes it's going to be easier to burn stress to do more successes or damage. Or it may be more difficult with a particular weapon because it's heavier, unwieldy, etc. So it's got that really cool vibe. And then there's all sorts of actions that you can take in the interim that you can, one person in the party can give a heartening speech and they can burn adrenaline to give somebody else stress, for example. It's got neat mechanics like that. So you get to, as a group, manage your resources. But what's slick is you've got in terms of the ones or the zombie heads, because they talk about in terms of the rules using the traditional dice, custom dice for Zombicide that have a Molotov cocktail for the 6, which is your success, and a zombie head for your 1, which is your failure. And so the rules really do refer primarily to zombie heads and Molotov cocktails, but it's 1s and 6s. Anyway, the point is if you roll more zombie heads than you do successes, right, after spending stress, even if you succeed, you generate trouble. So it really does, in sort of the modern thinking of role-playing game design, it has a success but consequence system built in, right? So depending on how much stress you want to burn, you may end up with a trouble. That trouble could be running out of ammo, lodging your machete into a sawhorse or into a road barrier and you've lost your weapon. Could be a variety of consequences. You slip and fall down the fire escape, It really has a lot of variety designed there for you. And that's one of the things that I really dig about the system, is the versatility of whether it be a quality of equipment, whether it be a condition like dark, stormy, raining, blind, etc. It's very easy to manipulate that pool of dice by 1s or 2s up and down to account for that stuff. Now, it's very fast, it's very simple, but it doesn't preclude you from having fun and exciting role-playing. But the really cool, unique part of the game, or not exactly unique, but something that a few modern games do, is you have a home base or a shelter, and the game's broken down into 2 phases. Your mission phase, and your mission phase is when you're out in the field, traversing across the city, risking danger on your way to the mission, and then performing the mission, and potentially, yes, almost inevitably, always, yes, always, it's always, zombies always coming, and in fact, when you're in combat, zombies keep coming. If you keep generating noise at the end of a round, if there is a zombie on the board still alive, or a zombie in the RP still left alive, for each PC that made noise, fired a gun, for example, screamed out in pain, the DM's gonna roll a D6, and for each zombie head that they get, another horde is going to begin and start showing up, right? Now, it's not as bad as your initial horde, but these zombies keep coming in these waves, just like they do in the board game, and it's super exciting and super taxing to resources. It's really stressful and fun. I super dig it. The second main phase of the game is the shelter phase. Now, during the shelter phase, each PC is going to make a supply check to ensure that the party has the requisite ammunition, food, medicine, etc. to sustain themselves between missions. Once that is done and you've ensured that you have the requisite supplies, you move on to the shelter actions. If you end up not having the adequate amount of supplies, some of the players or all of the players may end up with hindering conditions going into the next mission phase. But shelter actions are pretty slick. Each PC has the opportunity to take each of the 3 shelter actions one time. Shelter actions are going to give them the opportunity to gather rumors and gain information. It's going to give them the opportunity to build things or make repairs both to their gear and to their shelter, but also it's going to give them the opportunity to do some study or some training to better themselves for further missions. Then lastly, in the shelter phase, you're going to do the mission planning. You're going to plan for the next outing that the PCs are going to take. Now, theoretically, the best way to do that, at least for me as a game master, I think, but would be to do it at the end of the session so you know what you want to have prepared for the next game. Or if you're a quick game master, like a lot of the people that I know who play these games are, it gives you the opportunity to, okay, guys, well, let me have 10 minutes. I'll work something out. We'll throw some boards on the table if we've got the Zombicide miniatures, which aren't required, but certainly in my opinion are going to make a much more lively and intense experience, particularly when you just keep piling those bodies on the table that want to rip your PCs apart and rend their flesh. But I would imagine if you're prepared or a quick thinker, like a lot of people who play these games, or you have a series of missions that are chained together, like come in this main rulebook for your $40, you could certainly play more than one session in the night. And the game's got some pretty great rules to scale easily. So if you've got a party of 2 players up to a party of 6 players, you really can scale the game up or down to involve multiple people, and everybody at the table has access to all 18 of the actions. They have some semblance of a dice pool, right? So they have an opportunity to do everything. But in addition to that, you're going to pick 4 actions that are favored actions for you in which you're going to get an extra die. So at your character creation, it is possible to have that first mastery die in an action, right? And so it's got a lot of opportunity for everyone to have access to every tool to some degree at the table. And so no one's really restricted, even if you're better at something than somebody else at the table and I feel inferior because so-and-so is always rocking at that. I've got a thing that I can rock at, but also I can give anything at the table a shot. I really dig that. Take into consideration the simple hit point system and the simple death system. You go to 0, you roll a d6 on a 6. Whew, boy, that nearly sucked, but I'm okay, I'm unconscious, and hopefully someone can get to me and save my life, right? You get to a 2 through a 5, dude, you're screwed up. You're taking a serious penalty to one of your core attributes, and you're unconscious for a number of hours and out of the game based on that die result. Did you roll a 1 or a zombie head? You're done, right? But character creation's so easy, who cares, right? You should have a meat grinder if you want. Now, obviously, I want to have skin in the game, and I want to have narrative, and I want to have a good long-term story. And I don't want people's lives to be thrown away, but by the same time, this is overwhelming hordes of the undead, for God's sake. I mean, people need to get brought down. I think that the drama it demands to feast on the flesh of some PCs. So for me, in a game like this, I think death's got to be very real and on the table. Additionally, there are some simple rules for opposed roles against, player versus player, player versus non-player survivor. So if you want to engage in situations where you've got human baddies or human opposition, people that need to be persuaded or appealed to or dealt with in some other fashion, you absolutely can have that experience. Now, the game stresses that you really should be careful killing the living because there are so few of us left, but you do you, boo. You play the game that you want to play, right? For me, I want to do something with the Zombicide, Black Plague, and Green Horde. My group's not so crazy about the modern day stuff, even though I've got some of the Invader boxes, so I could do a sci-fi version of this game. The game itself is all the modern day, really geared to the second edition of the modern day Zombicide, right? But the rules for Zombicide are so simple. Absolutely anybody who's familiar with this game and has access to any of the other Zombicide game boxes could do a simple, very, very easy hack conversion to make the game the one that they want to play, which is what we're going to do. I want to do a dark world of, Deadite kind of zombie inspired by Evil Dead thing, right? Like, I want to have that experience, but with magic and swords and dragon bile that explodes instead of, guns or lasers or what have you. So I think that that's what we're going to pursue. One of the things that CMON provides for you on their website, you have access to a fillable PDF that you can download. It's got regular character sheets. It's got the shelter sheet for you. It's got a 58-page free PDF of the quick start rules. So if you really wanted to get into the Zombicide RPG and give it a shot, it's all right there for free on CMON's website at cmon.com. Now, can I justify someone who's not already into Zombicide spending $40 for this skinny book as a role-playing game that they should try to get into if they're into role-playing games? I'm going to have to go with a no. But as somebody who really, really digs Zombicide and wants a nice, fast-paced, action-packed game that I can play at my table, or more specifically is light enough that I'm comfortable to play with strangers at a convention, that I think I have enough energy and enough gear that I could bring an exciting experience to the table, then yeah, fucking A. I'm glad I spent my money on this game. Now, the point is that if you're not already into Zombicide, I don't think it's worth the money. If you're into RPGs and you want to do a Zombicide RPG and take your Zombicide experience to a deeper narrative level, I think it's worth the money. I think it's a pretty good buy. Anyway, what is the proper petitioning? It's like, subscribe, comment, commit, give me time and money, go to my Patreon at Why We Game. Is that the thing? Is that what we do now? Or fuck, man, I would just be happy if you told a friend or if you provided some sort of feedback. I mean, money would be great, but I'll just do with a subscribe and a share.